Well, many anti-vax groups online are full of moms, people who genuinely are concerned for their little ones. And Sabina Vora Miller understands that. She is a mother and a scientist. It's great to have you, Sabina.
Thanks for having me.
I find your story so fascinating. You are a science professional, and yet you still had doubts as a young mom about vaccines. What fueled your fear?
So it's really interesting. I think before I became a mom, I didn't really understand the whole arena of vaccine hesitancy. It didn't even cross my mind. I was a scientist first, mom second. But the second, I had my son, things switched, and I remember, waiting at the 2 month well visit at my doctor's office where he was supposed to get his vaccines, and in the back of my mind, I had all of these thoughts running through my head. Am I making the right decision? Is this the right call? Is this what I should be doing? Is this in the best interest for my son? And I realized, looking at all of this pervasive, very sensational imagery and sensational content on social media was actually playing a subconscious role in my own head.
Mm.
And I knew logically that it did not make sense. But sometimes anxiety is not logical. It's that fear of when you're a parent, whether you're doing the right thing for your child, that responsibility is huge.
And that's all people want, right? They want to protect their children, and I get that. What ultimately changed your mind?
So, I'm an immigrant to Canada. I'm a first generation immigrant. I come from a place where we had to wait out for over 3 to 4 hours in the hot sun to get our vaccines in school. And I came from having in my classroom children who had vaccine preventable diseases. So from a very young age, I have seen the impact vaccines have had on people's lives.
Mm.
And so sitting in that doctor's office, I had to just keep reminding myself, this is the right thing. I am doing the best I can for my child. This is protecting him from all of these incredibly dangerous diseases. And it was just a matter of having to speak to myself, understand the logic, understand the evidence, and put that anxiety aside, as hard as it was in the moment.
You calmed your fears, with knowledge. You became a science influencer yourself, which is so interesting. Why did you want to fight against, the misinformation, disinformation around vaccines that you were seeing?
So when I would talk to moms and mom groups, right, the first thing they would say is, am I making the right call for my child, right? It was never coming from a place of malice, right? It's coming from a place of wanting to do the best you could for your child, and understanding that, understanding the fears that parents have and wanting to do the right thing is important, because that actually brings empathy into the discussions. And I also found very often that as scientific professionals, we would throw jargon, we would throw numbers and stats, but people don't understand that, right? But if you actually speak from a place where it's like, I get it. I too was fearful, but here, let me explain to you why these vaccines are really important. And then also talk about side effects. I think what happens very often in the medical profession is that we know that the side effects are rare. We know that the benefits far outweigh the risks, but in the population, very often the risks are overblown and the benefits are underplayed. And I think it's just really important to phrase that to the parent and explain to them that while risks exist, nothing is 100% safe. The risks are so small and so rare. Meanwhile, the benefits are absolutely incredible. And just having these discussions and conversations without, being judgmental, without throwing jargon, I think is really, really important.
We asked our viewers about their vaccine questions, and we have a question from Luke from Muskoka. He writes us, what motivates intentional disinformation spreaders? What is the benefit?
Yeah, and so you have folks who are out there intentionally spreading rumors and bad information about vaccines. And generally speaking, these folks are, I like to call them bad actors, but they're probably worse than this. They're doing this because they actually have something that they are gaining from this distress, right? If you go back to the MMR, early MMR and autism days, the reason why a specific physician by the name of Andrew Wakefield was going on and talking about this is because he actually had conflicts of interest, right? He had a patent for his own measles vaccine. In fact, he had a patent for a cure for autism. He was doing all of this intentionally because he was trying to grift, essentially. And right, you see that even with RFK Jr. right now, who is unfortunately the HHS, the in the US, if you actually look to see how much money he's made spreading disinformation, in the last year alone, he made $10 million spreading disinformation about vaccines. So it's extremely lucrative for these people to spread these rumors. And if you look at it, RFK Jr. himself is vaccinated and his kids are vaccinated. So why would you vaccinate your child, but then tell others to not get vaccinated? It makes no sense. And it's because they know that vaccines are actually impactful. And you're seeing right now with the death of the 2 deaths actually in Texas that have occurred, RFK Jr. himself has changed his stance on vaccines because he's now being held accountable for these deaths.
Yeah, it's an important thing to differentiate what people actually do and what they say. And so follow Sabina online because she's got lots of science information that's good for you. Sabina, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.